While most lawmakers on both sides of the aisle expressed horror and outrage over the shooting, Georgia Republican Congressman Mike Collins took this approach, going to social media, posting on X that President Biden, quote, sent the orders for the assassination against former President Trump. He also posted that the local prosecutor in Pennsylvania should immediately file charges against President Biden. Now, Collins was apparently referencing recent comments from the president that the, quote, bullseye should now be placed on Donald Trump rather than on his poor performance at last month's presidential debate. We have reached out to the congressman's office for clarification, but we have not heard back.